Hi, I'm Tin. Welcome to my channel. This isn't a tutorial. It's simply me sharing my journey of rediscovering art and learning watercolor. Long story short, I've been on a journey to create art for myself again. In my day job as a video game animator, I'm helping bringing someone else's vision to life. So I wanted an outlet where I could explore my own ideas. But beyond that, I also wanted to relearn how to play and experiment creatively, the way I naturally did when I was younger. So, welcome to my channel, and thank you for being here. My previous videos were only music with subtitles. Let's put a voice to the hands. For this painting, I came in with one clear goal to really push the contrast between light and shadow. My previous painting felt a little too flat, so I wanted to challenge myself. Let's see if I can do it. This time, my subject is another insect. Similar to the bee I painted for, I thought might as well to keep up with the theme. But I remember seeing this beautiful white butterfly while volunteering at a garden during the first week of June. A friend invited me to help out for the day, and while I was there, I spotted this delicate little butterfly. I managed to take a few photos, and this painting is based on one of them. The plan was to recreate that moment in watercolor. One of the things I love about the subject was the dramatic lighting. The contrast between the light and shadow was exactly what I wanted to practice. So I didn't want to rush it. Because butterflies are so delicate, this butterfly was very delicate and specific. I sketched it first with a blue pencil to make sure the proportion felt right without committing to dark lines. Then I applied masking fluid to the areas I wanted to preserve as white. Because in watercolor, the brightest white is always paper itself. Once the masking fluid was on, I've let it dry. I also started using a hairdryer after seeing another watercolor artist do the same. It really does help speed up the drying process. Of course, the best results still come from letting the paint dry naturally. The colors really pop then. But once the masking fluid was completely dry, I started with a wet-on-wet wash, knowing I wanted to establish the lightest color first. There was a warm yellow glow underneath all of the greenery, even beneath the butterfly itself. So, I laid down soft yellow-green wash across the base of the painting. Then I began adding a darker shadow areas between the leaves. In this section, I know watercolors usually paint from light to dark, but I found it difficult to judge the value until I established some of the darkest area first. I'm experimenting anyway. This would give me something to compare everything else against. One thing I've noticed lately is that since I started this painting journey back in mid-May and began sharing the videos in early June, I've started noticing so much more around me. I've always considered myself fairly observant. But now, it's like I've developed another set of eye. One that's constantly looking for colors, textures, and subtle details. Light and shadow still feel new to me, but I'm beginning to recognize them. And that's been incredibly refreshing. It's been surprisingly rejuvenating to slow down, appreciate, and even notice these little details that have always been there. They're a part of everyday life, but I had simply stopped seeing them. I touched on this in one of my previous videos. With every painting, I feel like I'm growing. I notice more. I understand more. I begin to appreciate details that I would have completely overlooked before. It's pretty amazing, to be honest. It's not like I've suddenly unlocked a third eye or anything, but I do feel like I'm seeing more, feeling more, and appreciating more of the world around me. After laying down the initial colors, I removed the masking fluid. Here, you can see me filling back in those preserved white areas. Those lines weren't meant to stay pure white. They just needed to be lighter than the surrounding leaves. The veins in the leaves have these beautiful glowing yellow-green quality that I really wanted to capture. My goal was to recreate those delicate veins and the bright edges of the leaf as faithful as I could. But I think I applied masking fluid a little too thick in some places. So I tried to soften those lines afterward. That turned out to be more difficult than I expected because watercolor is transparent. Every adjustment blends into the layer that are already underneath. Going back to this idea of noticing more, I think painting has helped me appreciate life differently. Before, I would walk past this little moment without thinking much about them. Now I find myself remembering them, reflecting on them, and appreciating them long after they're past. Another thing I love is that whenever I come across a beautiful subject, I no longer just see a nice photograph. I also see a potential for painting. My artist brain starts thinking about composition, the color relationships, the light and shadows. That's the part that gets me excited. It makes me want to study the subject more closely before I ever put my brush onto the paper. With this butterfly, I knew right from the beginning that the biggest challenge would be preserving its brightness. The butterfly isn't actually pure white. There are subtle colors through its wings. So the challenge became figuring out how to add those details while keeping it feel bright. The painting itself is tiny, about 3 by 3 inches. So every little mark really matters. And how do I reserve all these delicate details in such a small painting? Working on these tiny paintings is definitely challenging, but it's also one of the things I enjoy most. I can usually finish one in an hour or so. Of course, after editing the footage, the final video ends up much shorter. My previous video was around 30 minutes each, even though the painting itself took well over an hour. As I keep chasing more detail though, I have a feeling these paintings will start taking closer to 2 hours, maybe even longer. We'll see. I remember watching another watercolor artist painted a butterfly that was much larger. His canvas was around 8.5 by 11 inches. He used a large flat brush to create these beautiful, delicate textures. So I tried adapting that technique with the small flat brush I have, and honestly, it works surprisingly well. After that, I switched to a small pointed detail brush to paint the fine lines in the butterfly wings. It's still not quite there where I want it to be, but I'm getting closer with each painting. At this point, the butterfly was starting to look a little too brown, which wasn't really what I had envisioned. But I kept going. Once you're this far into watercolor painting, there's really no going back. This is actually one of my favorite stages of the process, adding the outlines. Watching it now though, I realize I probably didn't need to outline everything. The butterfly and maybe a few of the main leaves were enough. Everything else could have been left softer and less defined. You can also see me lifting some of the light brown color from the butterfly because I wasn't happy with how warm it had become. Then I deepened the darkest shadow to capture the reference photo as closely as I could. But it was never meant to be an exact copy. What I really wanted was to capture my own interpretation of what I was seeing. Pushing the contrast a little further really helped the butterfly stand out and become the clear focal point of the painting. It's funny, before I added the outline, I honestly wasn't sure where the painting was going. But when those final detail went in, everything started coming together. It was another reminder to trust the process. It seemed to be a recurring theme with me, with every painting I make. There's always a point where I'm not sure until I get closer to the finish line. It's a good reminder, a good life lesson. Since I'm still in my bokeh area, I decided to use a Q-tip to add some soft bokeh effect to the background. It got a little muddy in a few places, but that's okay. Once I deepened the darker values, the bokeh started to stand out a little more. It doesn't have the same softness as the bee painting, but it does add another layer of texture to the piece. I felt hesitant before dabbing the Q-tip onto the paper. There was that little fear of ruining the painting after spending so much time on it. But as a saying goes, everything is impermanent. If that happened, that would be okay too. I am capable to paint it again. This is part of the process. Failing and trying again. And here's the finished painting. I liked it. It turned out better than I thought. Thank you for spending time with me. I'll see you in the next video.